Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, surprisingly, a third episode of what I like to call a podcast with no name. As always, I'm joined by my good friend Luke Steele. Luke, how are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's 3 episodes already. Eh? Look at us.
I know,
Look at
flying,
us.
flying. So,
Flying through. But it's been nice because they're just ad hoc. So it's good that they just we just pop up and then we do one and then we disappear and then we pop up again. And it means that there's always a lot to talk about, doesn't it? So
yeah, definitely. It's nice to do these. It's obviously just a way for us to be able to just chat about games, try to get away from the drama a little bit, chat about what we've been talking about, and hopefully people don't mind listening. I've just seen Pyro's put in the chat. He's curious how your external sound filter is. We were literally just talking about that, Matt. We'll have to see how things go. I didn't really think about the fact that it was Bonfire Night when we scheduled this for tonight. There's a little bit going on in the background, but thankfully nothing too close at the moment. But there's a very good chance that changes, so we'll see. We'll see how we get on for the rest of the night. But Luke, you said things should be a little bit quieter on your end at least, so it might just be my problem. So
it'll be Scott's fault if you hear bangs. Basically.
Yeah. Are you a fireworks kind of guy, Luke? Do you normally do much? No.
No. I consider it mostly redundant.
Yeah.
So, and as a pet owner as well,
Yes.
it's a bit of a pain, albeit I think cats are much more like who cares than dogs are. So that's one benefit, whereas dogs obviously go a bit mad and get a bit scared, which is a bit crap, but there you go.
Yeah. As the owner of two dogs, I feel I feel that. Funnily enough, one of them is completely just doesn't care. He's not asked about it whatsoever, but the other one is just shit scared. Basically for the entire week, because they've been going off for a little while, and it's a little tough on them. So my wife's currently downstairs with him, just taking care of him, making sure he's comfortable. The TV's blaring just to try and block out some of the sounds. He's been all right this year, thankfully. But like I say, it's not been too bad yet. The worst might come tonight. So. But appreciate it. We've got a few obviously friends in the chat there, so appreciate everybody who's stopping by. We got BMG in there, fresh off the XPN show last night with obviously yours truly, Luke, as well. We got Ash, we got Indy. Thank you very much for joining, mate. I appreciate it. I know Indy's not feeling too great at the moment, so hopefully you are feeling a little bit better than when we last spoke, mate. And we got a little bit of Indy goodness on the show at the moment. We've got a little bit of Jusant footage that I took a little bit earlier today. We might touch on that a little bit as well. We do have some pretty big non-indie games that I think we might be chatting about a bit, but hopefully we'll get to Jusant as well. So, but I've really been enjoying it. So, Pyra's just mentioned Flap as well. You know what I was just thinking today, Luke? I thought what might be pretty cool is if we do another one, maybe like towards Christmas time or something, it would be really cool maybe to get Puxley and Flap on and have the four of us as like a proper old school kind of like GPG reunion. So Flap, Puxley, if you do find yourself listening to this, I've seen Puxley in the chat a few times, then I'll reach out and it'll be cool to get something like that going. It'll be I think it'll be fun. So but look, obviously we've been about 6 weeks, I think, since we last caught something like that. It was before the October kind of game season kicked off. I think Starfield had not long been out when we last caught up. So since then, mate, I mean, there's been a plethora of games released. Like I was thinking today, like I put this together, the title, and obviously the big ones of October, Spider-Man, Alan Wake, Mario. But then I was thinking, Christ, we haven't had a chance to speak about Forza. We haven't spoke about Cocoon together. I know we both really love Cocoon. I'm sure there's games from September I'm missing as well, but obviously there are other games in October. So it's been pretty good couple of months for games, I think, hasn't it, mate?
Yeah, a bit of an understatement. Been a bit ridiculous, really, hasn't it? I mean, in that time I've been playing just so much. Like Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty, Cocoon, as you said, finished that in that period. Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake, I'm currently playing. Mario Wonder, currently playing. I feel like I'm missing something, but I can't quite remember. Obviously, Jusant's just come out, which I haven't gone into yet because I'm going to go into that as soon as I've done some other stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously, I've played a preview of that anyway. So I've got a good idea of what that is. God, there's been just lots. I've even gone back to like Halo Infinite. I've been playing that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, season 5
which has been enjoyable
recently.
Yep. Yeah, Forza as well, which I haven't played that much of, to be fair, but that came out. I don't know where to start, really.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. I'm trying to think. Yeah. I think things going to calm down now for the rest of the year. Do we have any sort of big releases throughout November and December? Nothing's coming to mind at the moment, but there's a very good chance I'm just forgetting about them.
It all coming out in December, did you say?
November or December.
In November. There is stuff, isn't there? I can't remember. Like it's certainly lower key, I would say.
Yeah.
Than the other stuff. I know the Avatar game comes out in December, doesn't it? From Ubisoft. So that could be potentially decent based on the previews. It looks like, certainly as a technological showcase, it could be very impressive. Beyond that, I'm trying. Oh, Super Mario RPG comes out.
Yeah, the remake of that's this month. Yeah.
So I'm debating whether I've got one of those Switch voucher. You know, the kind of 84 quid one where you get 2 games. So I used one of the vouchers for Wonder, obviously. So I'm debating whether to get the remake or Pikmin 4 with the other one.
Right. Yeah.
That's it off the top of my head, but I feel like there's other stuff.
I'm sure there is. I mean, yeah, I think it's very easy to to forget about things coming up when there's so much that we that we probably still got to play. Indy says it well in the chat. I think he says games are back for the rest of the year, even if it's just catching up. Yeah, I've got games on the backlog. You know, from my perspective, there's still like Baldur's Gate 3 coming to Xbox still apparently this year as well, which is obviously an absolute monstrous game. I've picked up some other games. I don't know if you saw my tweet yesterday, Luke, but I've picked up Dave the Diver for the Steam Deck as well. I'm looking to get into that. Yeah, it's been a pretty ridiculous year for games so far. with still more to come. I guess all the big hitters are kind of out of the way at the moment, but Baldur's Gate is one I haven't even got to yet because that was always going to be like a Christmas game for me. Because it just came out in that period where there was so much going on. So I'm quite looking forward to actually playing that, but whether it actually becomes a Christmas game at this point is unknown because I might still be finishing games that, you know, I bought earlier in the year, right? So absolutely.
Yeah, mad.
Yeah, we'll see how things go. I think I'm hoping. I know they're still kind of committing to it. I'm hoping that does come to Xbox this year, and then hopefully for me as well, it'll be a Christmas game. But we'll see how things pan out. You mentioned the Avatar game. That's one that wasn't even on my radar. To be perfectly honest, I know that it wasn't that long ago that they showed it off a little bit. Am I right in thinking it was probably since we last caught up? But I didn't even watch it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, they just had some previews that released. I think people got to play like 2 or 3 hours, and the general sentiment was pretty positive. It's not doing anything like revolutionary.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on my radar as such, but I don't know. It's kind of slowly crept up because like I find the idea of a game which is a bit, I don't mean in this way, but a bit brainless to be quite nice, you know?
I get that.
It's in a slightly lull period and just, you know, if it comes out and it's a decent first-person shooter, certainly very beautiful world, and, you know, like I said, I think, to be honest, it's probably the visuals that are really attracting me to it because it's using the Snowdrop engine. It's got full ray tracing features apart from path tracing on PC. So it's definitely a very impressive game. But yeah, it's one of those that I suspect I might pick up depending on how busy I am with other stuff.
Yeah. Is Avatar a franchise that you're keen
No,
on? No. Yeah.
no, not
That's
really.
kind of
No.
what's
Yeah,
like why I don't have too much enthusiasm. Like I remember going
yeah,
to see Avatar. Obviously, it was obviously a cinematic showpiece.
yeah.
At the time, but other than it looking pretty,
Yes.
I can't remember. I couldn't tell you much about Avatar. So I
No.
don't like have any real attraction to it. So, but people seem
No.
excited at least.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, I think um like especially the story of the first film is super derivative. It's not particularly engaging from a story perspective. What's engaging about is the world and the world
Yeah.
building and the visuals. And I suspect this game will be pretty much the same. But I think it's more attractive to me to play that than look at it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like at least if you're exploring the world, it's just fundamentally more engaging. And if you then get the combat right, which it seems like they have, then it could be good. But it's one of those. I'll wait and see how it's received critically. You know, if it's kind of getting like high 70s, low 80s, then I'll probably pick it up. But if it's below that, then probably not.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. So, yeah, well, I figured we might as well get into some. I mean, before we can get in the games, we probably won't touch on this, but obviously, since we last caught up, we've had things like the Xbox Partner Preview, PS5 revisions, ABK closed, and I find it actually a little bit hilarious, Luke, that we've not once discussed that particular deal
Oh yeah,
on this show. I think we'll keep it that way for now. I don't think there's too much to say now. Anyway, obviously it's
yeah.
closed. We had BlizzCon this weekend as well for
It
anyone
is.
that's been paying attention to that. So yeah, there's been an absolute boatload of stuff to talk about, but we want to focus on the games. I think tonight, because there's so many, we'll see how many games we get through over the next hour or so. I think what we'll probably start with though, Luke, if you're okay with it, is maybe Spider-Man. Obviously, there's been a little bit of news come out today. I don't know if it's official or what, but obviously there was a little bit of news about sort of Miles Morales being the main character in Insomniac Spider-Man games going forward. I saw tweets. I didn't see
Okay.
sort of any official
I
sources
haven't
on
seen
that.
these.
Yeah, I think BMG asked it. So yeah, BMG asks, how do you feel, Luke? Miles Morales would be the main guy for the next main entry Spider-Man game. Like I say, I don't know where that's come from. It would be weird for it to be an official source on a Sunday of all games. So I'm assuming it's just a rumor or a leak
Yeah.
at this point. But do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, you've played and completed Spider-Man 2, I believe.
Yeah.
So any particular thoughts on if that was the direction that Insomniac will go?
I think if it is, then that's cool. Like I think that's pretty brave. To move away from Peter. I like it's a bit difficult to talk about it too much without delving into spoilers, right?
Yeah, fair.
So, uh, but so I'm not. I won't try and go into that too much. But I think the way that the game progresses and finishes up, like it leaves it pretty open in terms of directionality for a third game, which will definitely happen.
Yeah.
But I don't see them abandoning Peter or anything like that, or not having him play a part or anything. But having Miles be the main focus, yeah, I could see that. There's also other elements again which I can't really talk about too much, but there are hints. Well, there's a pretty significant hint at the main game that maybe we'll have another character, another playable character in future games, shall we say? So, and that would be really cool. That person. I think if there is a third game, maybe you'll still have only 2 spider people. Maybe you'll have more. Like I don't know. Like I think the direction they can go is really interesting. And with this game, they just totally nailed it. I think it's just a fantastic game. So much better than the first, and that's not saying that the first was a bad game, because it was a really good game.
Yeah.
But I just think it's one of those sequels where you just see this kind of huge leap forward in everything, really. So I think it's just, yeah, it's a fantastic game, and the future of the series is really interesting, and obviously how that interplays with Wolverine as well, which we don't know. But we know it's set in the same universe, but that's about it. So yeah, I'm still actually playing bits of it. Spider-Man 2. It's a great. It's just such a joy sometimes just to go and explore in that world, as in traverse through it, because the traversal mechanics are so much fun, especially at the end when you've kind of leveled up and unlocked everything and kind of got the full speed of traversal. And I think it's it may be the only game that I'm seriously contemplating getting a platinum for.
Oh, okay. You're not normally a platinum guy, are you?
No, not at all. But I kind of look at that and I think I would be quite happy to do all of the activities in that game because they're just so much fun. And it's not as if they're doing anything revolutionary, right? It's like go and find, 50 spider bots in the world, which I've done, right? But because the traversal is so enjoyable, it actually makes that kind of menial activity a lot more fun. Like if someone said to me, "Oh, you've got to do, you've got to go and find 50 BBs in Death Stranding, right, in the world." Like, as much as I love Death Stranding, it would be pretty dull to go and do that, no matter how much I love the game. But because it's Spider-Man, it's really fun, the web wings and stuff. So I think it is. So I'm slowly kind of just checking them off and doing all the bits I will. So I'll post evidence if I actually platinum it, which I suspect I will. But I think it's terrific. Like it's just an incredible game, and it's also one of the most next gen feeling games, I think, because it uses like the full suite of what the PlayStation 5 has in terms of, it's loading, it's world traversal, sound, the haptics, all that kind of stuff. And obviously how great it looks and all the ray tracing and stuff. It's one of those few games that actually feels like, okay, this is actually what was promised kind of at the beginning of this generation, which is not only materialized in certain games. And a lot of those games have actually been on the PC side, arguably. So yeah, it's fantastic. I would highly recommend it if people, have a PlayStation 5 and want to go and check it out. And hopefully it won't be too long before it comes to PC.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it'll be one of the ones that comes to PC relatively soon. Obviously, they had a lot of success with both Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales on PC. So I imagine they'll be looking to bring it across this way at some point. You mentioned obviously it was a massive improvement over the first loop. Are there any particular standouts in terms of this element of the game they really elevated from the first game to the second game?
Yeah, there's a couple, and I was kind of thinking about these as I was playing it. The first one is the traversal, which in the first game anyway was super fun and was just kind of the perfect encapsulation of Spider-Man, swinging through a city. But this one, like the obviously you have the traversal, but it's quicker anyway. Just you're swinging across a city because they can actually load this stuff properly now. That's really quick. Then they've introduced the web wings, so you can just get those out at any point and just glide and through the world. And there are wind tunnels that form in the city as well that you can go through, which completely propel your speed. You can slingshot off buildings, including super slingshot, which is like a one that makes you travel even faster. So you can get from place to place really quickly. And then there are other ancillary abilities to that, which allow you to kind of elevate how high you go in the world, and then also how quickly you might dash while you're traversing. So that's one. The second one is combat, which is really good. Again, first game had a lot of great combat stuff. It was very Arkham-esque, but obviously quicker owing to how Spider-Man is as a character. And you had some tech abilities effectively, like ricochet webs and such, but that was about it. But in this game you get kind of that whole suite of tech abilities that you've already had, plus you have Spider-Man specific abilities. So Peter has the like the armored spider suite of abilities, and it's kind of stuff that you can activate ad hoc. And then Miles has his venom powers, and then also obviously, as people have seen, Peter gets a symbiote suit, and that unlocks a whole new tree of abilities for him. So the kind of back and forth and balletic energy of all the combat is completely different now, and there's just so many options in combat, I think, compared to the first one, that it makes it very enjoyable. So those are the two main ones, but I think as well, just in terms of, you know, they've clearly been playing a lot of Uncharted games, because there's so many big like set pieces, you know, big blockbustery set pieces, which is great. There's a lot of variation in missions. Storyline is fantastic. Obviously Venom is just incredible in this game, and again, I won't get into spoilers about why, but they really nail that in this. So it's really I was playing Miles Morales recently as well. I played it just before I played Spider-Man 2, and the visual uplift is pretty large actually when you go back. Like, it's not immediately noticeable, and then you go back and you're like, actually this is a pretty big uplift on what they had. So I think they've done really well to make it, again, feel like a big next gen-esque game, you know, make it feel like a big jump in a sequel, even if, you know, much of the game is set within the same city. So it's great. I really just loved it. As I said, I think I tweeted, I think it's probably at least as good as Arkham City was, and I considered that to be the best superhero game ever made. Probably one of the best action adventure games ever made, actually. So it's that good. It's that kind of level.
Nice. That's pretty high praise. I do remember your tweet when I think you completed it, and you spoke glowingly about it at the time. It's interesting you mentioned the combat. Actually, I was listening in the car just today to the Game Mess podcast with Jeff Grubb. I don't know if you've heard the latest episode. They were actually discussing Spider-Man 2, and they were actually a little critical of the combat. Obviously, I've not played it, so you know I can't really comment myself. I think they were maybe they were thinking it was they were talking about how there's a specific like 4-hit combo that becomes a little bit repetitive and overuses the game. And I think their position was by the end of the game it was maybe a little bit on the, I don't want to put words in the mouth, but I guess just the way I would describe it's maybe just a bit dull and repetitive. So it's interesting hearing from your perspective that you feel that the combat's one of the elements where they've really elevated, and how, you know, the skill trees between the characters really helps with that.
Yeah, I can see what they mean. I mean, they'll be talking about the square combo, which is your kind of your main combo.
Yeah.
Which I guess I understand, like, in terms of a criticism. I didn't really notice it, to be honest, throughout the game. Like, I think because of the diversity of everything else you can do in combat, I think maybe if you're spamming that and you're not taking advantage of the other stuff, I could see how that would get a bit repetitive. But yeah, that's an interesting point. It's not a criticism I've heard, but it's totally valid. I mean, I can understand why some people might not like that, but interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
I guess it's one of those things. I think, you know, almost any game could be boiled down to one particular mechanic and one particular combo in some cases. And I think obviously it's kind of up to the player a little bit to utilize the weapons that the game gives you. But obviously, if it is just easy just to mash one button and get through the game, then, you know, I can understand that. But, you know, from everything that I've seen, it did seem like combat variety was probably a strength of the game, just because of, well, you've got different characters, you've got skill trees that unlock different abilities and things like that. So I just thought it was interesting critique, because it was something that I hadn't actually heard. Obviously the reviews came out, they were glowing. You know, the only critique I really heard after launch was obviously about bugs and things like that, but nothing really about combat or anything. So I thought it was just interesting hearing that today. It was just something I hadn't heard before.
Yeah, definitely. The bug one was quite interesting, because I think people's experience on that really varies. So for me, I had like 2 bugs at the very start of the game, and then nothing afterwards. And my wife played and completed it and didn't have any. And obviously, I always think, like, Twitter's a bit annoying because everything gets amplified, doesn't it? You know, everything gets like picked up and amplified, and it's not necessarily representative of everybody's experience. I didn't even have a crash. I know BMG said he had 1 crash. I didn't have any crashes, and I saw some people did have crashes, but But yeah, it's interesting. And then there's complaint, there's certain bad faith people that come out and say it should have been delayed and stuff. And I think if they'd actually sat down and played the game, they'd see that it's a very polished experience, not discounting that it might have bugs for some people. But that's Twitter, isn't it? It's what it is. It was same for Starfield when that came out, even though fundamentally it wasn't that buggy a game at all. For a Bethesda game, which is quite exceptional, really. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's obviously usual suspects on either side of the so-called console war that obviously are trying to weaponize, things like that. I did see one bug that I thought was actually just hilarious. I think it was, it might be Mr. Mighty Players, if I remember, where he turned into a cube. It was just like a little cube that was swinging around. Like I love bugs like that. Like I know obviously it's maybe not ideal if you've got to restart if you lose progress, but it looked funny enough in my opinion, at the very least. But it was funny reading what John Linneman was talking about. That it sounded like maybe the day one patch is what maybe introduced some of the bugs, because obviously a lot of the review copies were played pre-patch. And a lot of their experiences were apparently relatively bug free, and then obviously people play it on day one, get the patch, and maybe that's what introduced the bugs, which is interesting. But really glad to hear you enjoyed it, mate. Obviously, it must be a pretty damn good game if it's got you coming back for more for the platinum, especially when there's so much more to play as well. It's got its hooks in you that much as well. So, do you have many platinums?
I've got no platinums.
You've got so this could be first.
This could be this probably will be the first one.
Do you have many 100% on Xbox?
I'm maybe, but I don't, because I don't keep track of it. I don't actually know.
I think I've got like 3, and one of them's like Madden 06, which you could you could easily you could just set career mode off or on auto and leave it for half an hour and you can get them all. There's like 1 or 2, none of them that I've actually strived for. All back from the 360 days, but it's not something I've I really go for, to be honest. Achievements isn't really one for me. So
just not my thing either.
Yeah. Nice. Well, maybe moving on to another game, hopefully one that I can contribute a bit more to the conversation that I've been playing, which is Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which I completed this past week. Nice. I know you played a little bit at EGX. You were saying as well, and it sounded like the build that they had at EGX left you with pretty good feelings for the game. So have you managed to play much of Mario Wonder? I know obviously you're occupied with other things, so I don't think you're quite completed yet. But have you managed to play much?
Yeah, I've played like a good few hours. I find myself coming to it actually, like I'll do a PlayStation on like Alan Wake, let's say, and then I'll play like Wonder, which is like kind of a weird dichotomy of experience, but it's actually worked really well, and I really like coming to that, because it's very much as all 2D Marios are. It's one you can just pick up and play and run with, and just play a bit and then put it down, and you can come back at any time. So that's the main way I've been playing it, and like I maybe sort of 2 worlds in, if that makes sense. Or 2 piranhas down, I guess, probably for added context to you. And I mean, it's just magnificent, isn't it? Really, I'd be interested to see what you thought of it, just generally. But I think it's so creative. I mean, it's just so unbelievably creative, and the way that they kind of grab ideas and build a mechanic around it and then just chuck it away, and then you don't see it maybe ever in the game again, or once or twice more. I love when games do that, because I think it's so intelligent and must be so difficult to do. So yeah, I mean, how did you find it? Where would you? I don't know if you're a big 2D Mario fan, but I don't know where you put it in the Mario pantheon, as it were.
I mean, it's difficult to compare. I mean, I'm kind of someone who would probably say I prefer 2D over 3D Mario. I think platformers just in general I prefer in 2D over 3D. Obviously, Odyssey was magnificent. I really enjoyed 3D World and Bowser's Fury as well. I thought that was really good. But I think Mario Bros. Wonder's got to be one of the best Mario games there is,
Yeah,
to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I think it's marvelous. And both me and my wife are playing it. I've completed it, but I'm kind of done. But my wife's
Yeah.
completed it, but she's going for the green tick on every level now. Like she's
Yeah.
kind of a completionist, where I'm kind of right. I'm done. I'll move on. So but I thought, it was pretty marvelous, and I think the stuff that you touched on, there's a couple of things actually. One thing I want to say is I just find it astounding how Nintendo can take Mario with the same characters, typically the same enemies, the same Goombas, Bowser, and yet make each iteration of the game feel so fresh, different, and new. It's pretty unbelievable that they've been able to maintain that, not just for 2 or 3 games, but over 2 or 3 decades or more, however long it's been at this point, and you're right. The thing you talk about, the mechanics, I guess maybe what you're specifically talking about is the Wonder Seeds and the transformations that the worlds go through. I won't go into too much detail on that because I don't want to spoil any for you that you might get later on, but yeah, some of the things that they do there are just really cool. Some of them feel like you're on some sort of acid trip when you go through them as well, because the really psychedelic. And the things that they've done there are just really good. I really enjoyed the final boss. Actually, I thought the final boss was really good as well. Whenever you get there, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But yeah, just generally, I think they've done a really awesome job, and it kind of has just solidified, kind of for me, that 2D Mario is better than 3D Mario. Obviously, that's a very subjective thing, and 3D Mario is still awesome. But there's just something that just feels great about a really tight 2D platformer. I think you can't really beat that, So yeah, it's really, really good. The only criticism I would leverage at the game, and this isn't unique to this particular game, is I'm not a big fan of levels where the level moves and you're stuck at the pace of the level, if that makes sense. That's my only criticism of the game, really, if I'm being honest with you. But obviously that's not something unique to this game. I just think in general, games that kind of try to dictate the pace like that, when you're trying to run ahead, I think but it's a very minor nitpick, if I'm being completely honest, but that's kind of how good the game is. I've got to focus on those minor ones if I do want to offer any sort of critique. But yeah, so it's actually been really fun watching my wife play it as well. Like, it's a fun game to watch somebody play as well. And I'll help her out with some things as well, which is cool. So I am kind of doing a little bit of a second playthrough, I guess, from that perspective, when I'm helping her out with some things that maybe I did it and she wasn't, and she has been able to do it. And, so it's been really cool from that. And it's actually one of those rare games, similar to Zelda, actually, from my perspective, where, my wife plays games, but she'll play like Pokemon, she'll play Mario, she really likes Zelda. But so it's not too often that we get to like enjoy a game together. But Mario's one of those games where we can, even if we're, even if she's just watching me or I'm just watching her, or we're helping each other, whatever it might be. We've not actually tried the co-op on this, to be honest. Mainly because my Joy-Cons are knackered, so I've only got one. I've only got one controller. They're not knackered. The stick drift on one of them, surprise, is horrendous. So I've actually just done a return for them this past week, actually, because I think, even though obviously, when was it? 2017. The Switch was released. Was it that long? Yeah, it was like 6 years ago now, wasn't it?
2017.
So I think they're even replacing like launch ones if they develop stick drift, because of all the hassle that they had. I think there was like lawsuits and stuff. So hopefully we'll get those fixed, because it's basically unplayable in handheld at the moment. I'm relying on the Pro Controller.
Yeah, I've got a really annoying one, where it's not even mine technically. It's my wife's. She bought the Switch Lite. I can't even remember the name.
Oh, right.
The handheld.
Yeah, I think it was just Switch Lite, wasn't it? I think that's
I think it was a Switch Lite. Yeah, so she's got one of those, but that's got stick drift on the left one. Obviously, it's not detachable, and it's like the Pokemon X and Y special edition of it. So it's not even as if it's like a bog standard, normal Switch, which I think you could probably live with. It's that it's actually got some residual value, because it's a limited version of it. So I really need to see about trying to get that fixed somehow, which is a bit annoying.
That sucks. Yeah, I guess that's one of the issues with the Switch Lite, obviously not having the detachable controllers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and you can't even put that in a dock either, even if you
Yeah.
wanted to hook it up to a
Yeah.
TV and use a Pro controller either. So, yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier, there's been a lot of news since we last spoke. There's been lots of Switch 2 rumors as well, and that's actually one thing I really hope that they fix. Make improvements on the controllers and particularly the ergonomics of it in handheld and the controller and things like that. I spoke far too much about my thoughts on the Switch as a handheld device in the past. But yeah, it's fair to say I didn't play a single moment of Mario in handheld mode. So
see, I've only played it in handheld mode, which is interesting, albeit I have a grip, which makes the whole experience just 100 times better.
Yeah. So is that a grip that goes around the device, or is it one of the ones where it's like new Joy-Cons that you attach that obviously have the more ergonomic controls?
No, it's one where you get the whole Switch and you slip it into the grip, and then you've got the grips on. You can actually change the grips out on mine as well, so you get a few options of which kind of grip. I've got the ones that I'd say they're quite similar to like the Wii U controller grips, which are actually very comfortable. But that's made it's a pain like to travel with and stuff, because obviously you can't, like I've got a case for the Switch but not the grip, so I have to take the grip off with the Switch in the case and then obviously reassemble it when I want to play it. But like it's so much better than having to play the Switch without any grips in handheld mode, which is horrendous, really. So I don't know what they were thinking. As you say, as you mentioned, like hopefully they think about very carefully for the next one in terms of just give me something to grab.
Yeah,
like it's not really that difficult. Why we got flat surfaces that we're grabbing effectively? It's just it's so uncomfortable. But yeah.
Yeah, and especially coming off using the Steam Deck quite a bit. Obviously, the difference between the two is night and day. I can actually play the Steam Deck in handheld mode pretty comfortably in the Switch.
Yes.
It's like holding a friggin' tablet essentially and trying to game on a tablet files on it. And so, it's interesting that you've played mostly in handheld. Though, like I say, I simply will only really play the Switch in dock mode at the moment. It's obviously just a much better, and it's also actually Mario's one of those games where, just the art style of Mario really, I guess, hides the power discrepancy between the Switch and current gen hardware as well. Like it's a game, you look at it look fantastic. It's really pretty. It's really bright, colorful, vibrant, it really masks any sort of issues that you might have. I think we've spoken in the past. I've talked about games like Pokemon, for example, and it doesn't look great in handheld, and then you blow it up with a 4K display, and it really shows its age. I think Mario, and I think Odyssey was the same as well. Actually, I think really masks that a little bit as well. So. So you're 2 worlds in. So you still got a fair bit to go. It's I think it probably took me about 8 or 9 hours to complete it. But like I say, I kind of didn't complete it or anything like that. I think it's a game you could easily put sort of 30 plus hours if you wanted 100% everything. Like I said, that my wife's going through, you can get a green tick on each level, and that involves getting all of the Wonder Seeds, the purple coins. Some levels have like secret exits that you've got to get in order to get that green tick, and that's kind of what she's working towards at the moment. So I think it is one of those games where if you just kind of want to mainline it and just power through it a little bit like I did do some extra stuff, you can do that and get an absolutely amazing sort of 8 to 10 hour experience, which in my opinion is a perfect length for a game like this. 100%. Or if you really want to kind of just go in and complete the whole thing, you're going to get a really good, like say 25 to 30 hours or something like that of it if you like as well. So nice. I assume you'll be going back to it.
Oh yes, yeah. It's on the rotation at the moment, so I'll definitely have that finished before Christmas for sure, probably in the next couple of weeks.
Nice. And I suspect the main other game that's on the rotation to try and nicely segue us into it is Alan Wake 2.
Correct. That is great. So I'm pretty far into that. So I think I'm about 13 or 14 hours. So I've got, I think by all accounts, it's about a 20-hour playthrough.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought
maybe a
it
bit
was
more.
shorter than that, to be honest. For some reason, when he said 12:14, I thought, oh, Christ, you must be getting pretty close to the end of
No,
that
no, like
point.
there's quite a long game. For it's particularly for a survival horror, you know, they're generally not that long. So yeah, I've got a good few hours left of that, and that is a really special game. It's
Yeah.
like a really really special game. Did you play the original
Okay. Oh,
on the 360?
yeah. So, okay. So, I want to. This is one thing I want to talk about. So, I guess before we dig into any more of
Yeah,
Alan Wake 2, let's talk about the original because I didn't play the original.
cool.
Um, I did recently try the remaster,
Yes.
and I don't want to disappoint you, Luke, but I really, really struggled with that opening hour or so of the
Mm,
game. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a reflection of the game. I think it's more a reflection of its age
yes. Yeah.
at this point. So it's obviously it's a remaster, not a remake.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was playing, I was like, this feels like over 10 years old, and it's like, well, it is over
Yeah.
10 years old. It's
Yeah.
just been given a fresh lick of paint. So I've not actually gone back to it, just because I just felt really clunky, especially coming off Control, which I really really enjoyed
Mm,
from Remedy,
yeah.
and I think that game just controls really well.
Yes. Yeah, it
Um,
does.
and going to this, it just you know, I'm not actually someone who really like calls for things like remakes. To be honest, I think sometimes remakes
Mm,
can often be seen a little bit as a bit of a you know an easy cash grab. But I really do think this is probably a game that could really benefit from a
yeah,
remake
for a remake.
in
Yeah.
Alan Wake 2's engine, because it just feels every day its age, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just meant I didn't really go back to it. So
Yeah.
did you play the remaster? Obviously, you played the original when it came out. Did you go
Yeah.
to the remaster when that came out as well?
Uh, I briefly so yes, I played the original when it came out, and I briefly played the remaster. But I think I had the same impression as you did, which was actually I'm not going to play this very much because um, coming back to it 10 years later, you really feel how old the game is, and I don't think it feels like absolutely dreadful compared to maybe some games of that era, but it just doesn't feel right, does it? Like it's not particularly fun to control that game,
Yeah,
and obviously, as you say, by reference to Control, which is just one of the smoothest playing kind of
yeah,
action third person games out there. Like it just doesn't. It's really difficult to play it basically, and not compare it and not be a bit aggrieved that it plays like shit essentially. So um but it's yes, but I played it when it came out and I really loved it. I thought it was just weird in the way that Remedy games are weird. Um and you know, had this really cool world and this cool premise and you know, cool mechanics with the light and stuff like that. It wasn't like amazing, the original. I think most people are agreed on that. Like it was one of those games that had a ton of potential that wasn't effectively realized in the first game, albeit it was a bit of a cult classic and a good game.
yeah,
Um, and then you come on to this game, and it's just so different in many ways to the original, and so surprising as a result. Um, and it, you know, this game, what I really like about it is that you know, the original game was never a horror game. Really, it was more like a kind of action game. You were constantly fighting enemies,
yeah,
and it had some creepy stuff, but it always felt a bit, I don't know, like a bit kooky almost. Like you never really scratched the proper horror itch. And I think this one does because obviously it's now a proper survival horror game. So there's, you know, there are nowhere near as many enemies in this game. They dole them out in the same way, you know, Resident Evil doles out its enemies, like a RE2 remake or something like that. And it has this very unsettling atmosphere. But then, you know, randomly, I won't get into spoilers about it because people are playing it, and it's one thing I hate, but it will just do these things that you just like, what on earth will Remedy like smoking when they were doing it, but in like a really positive way.
Yeah,
like
I get that.
In a this is just so bizarre, but it's so engaging. There's going to be talk about one particular bit in this game, which I played it the other day, and I just sat there like absolutely transfixed by it, and when I finished it, I just started laughing because I was like, that was so incredible and so strange. And like, to put it in context for you, because you play Control, right? So
Yeah.
I assume you finished Control.
Yeah.
So the ashtray maze in Control,
Yes.
with the Take Control song, think about something like that, but in Alan Wake 2, but not a maze. And it's just bonkers, basically. It's just totally bonkers. And it has so many of those moments that are just like, this is so weird. Like, it's such a strange thing to do in this game, but it works. And it's just like this studio that's, clearly had a love for this IP, and they've just gone, you know what? Let's really, like, Control was very esoteric, right? It was very strange, but it fundamentally, start to finish, it was quite, told in a way that was quite narratively coherent, I would say, in terms of start to finish, the story, you can piece together the plot, and you end where you end. Alan Wake 2 is very much like, so esoteric with its storytelling. It's kind of like all over the place, but it always feels very controlled. It always feels like they know what they're doing when they're doing this, and it's meant to be this kind of bizarre, dreamlike narrative. It just blows me away, actually, every time. Yeah, I just think it's such a weird and wonderful experience, and you just don't. It's one of the most creative games I've ever played, and you never, like, you barely ever see this in AAA games. Like, it's much more like a kind of indie sensibility, but with this massive budget. I mean, they probably don't have a massive budget now in Remedy, because they don't actually, Control was like 30 million euros, wasn't it? Which is nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just fantastic. I assume you've not picked it up yet.
I haven't yet. No, it is something that I've been like. Obviously, the reviews again was another one of the glowing reviews from pretty much everybody that's played it. So it is something that I was wanting to pick up. I think we spoke about it last time, actually. Is I was hoping to play it and finish remastered before picking up, and then I guess the only thing that gave me a little bit of hesitance was the fact that I didn't quite click with the first game. So I guess that was going to be one of my questions for you, actually, Luke. Is obviously someone who has played both. I know you've not quite finished 2 just yet, but is it again that you think that there is a necessity to have played the first game to get the? Well, I'm assuming playing the first game to get the most out of 2. I'm sure that's the case, but can you still have a great experience with 2 if you haven't played 1?
Yeah, I was before the game came out. I remember listening to Sam Lake being, talking about, being asked that kind of question. And he was like, absolutely not. You don't need to play the first game. It's cool if you have, and obviously there's nods to the first game, and obviously it's a continuation of the first game story. But he was like, you don't need to. And the point was that Saga Anderson, who's one of the playable characters of Alan, that's meant to be like an onboard of a new player experience almost. So she's seeing the world for the first time, as you might be, not familiar with Alan Wake. And the way they interweave that narrative with Alan Wake's narrative is very clever. And I think, actually, if there's any game that I think is quote unquote necessary, it's probably Control.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So I think if you play Control, you will see a lot more of this game in that context than you perhaps would if you played Alan Wake. I think all you need to do for Alan Wake literally is go and read a synopsis of the story, and maybe watch a kind of YouTuber synopsis about the story, an explanation of what happens, and that's it. And if equally, you don't have to play Control, but there is just so much stuff in this game that if you have played Control, you'd be like, oh, okay, I kind of what's going on. So yeah, I think it's a great game to jump into, even if you've not played Alan Wake. Effectively, nice. I don't think that's necessary reading, so to speak.
That's good to hear. And it's funny you mentioned Control, because I think wasn't the DLC for Control called like and it
Yes.
was like the Alan Wake experience or something
Yeah,
like that, or it was established. That's when it was established that we're part of like this same universe.
Same universe.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's all the same universe, and it's there's a lot. Obviously, I won't go into spoilers, but there's a lot of crossover in many ways. So it's yeah, I would highly recommend picking it up, even if you've never played Alan Wake.
Nice.
I think it's well worth it because there's if you're a fan of survival horror games, it's a great survival horror game. It does all of the stuff that you would expect those games to do very well. You know, ammo is scarce, health is scarce, enemies can be difficult. But beyond that, I think if you're looking for this, like a really incredible narrative that is told in a way that is not traditional at all, and that has like this weird and very unique style to it, then this is a game you should play.
Nice.
Basically. So yeah, I think it's yeah, it's amazing, and also it just looks incredible.
Yeah,
it looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's as did see you tweet about it. And it's actually one of the questions I had for you. Is obviously you're playing it on PC,
yeah,
fully decked out rig. I'm sure you're playing it with path tracing, all the bells and whistles, and from at least from what I've heard from the people who played it like that, it's probably one of, if not the best looking game ever. Maybe would that be hyperbole to say that?
It's certainly like top 5 or 3. Like I don't know quite where it ranks in terms of best looking ever, but it's well up there quite easily. I'm playing it with path trace. It's I'll give you context, however. This is how brutal this game is, which is that so I've got everything maxed. Everybody knows my rig, so I won't go into that, but I've got everything maxed. And I've got DLSS on, obviously, because that's like a necessity here. And I've got DLSS frame generation on, set to quality. So that means it's upscaling from 1440p to 4K as the base. Yeah. There are times in this game where it drops below 60 on my rig, which means effectively that the native, that game natively at 1440p with path tracing is doing probably around 20 FPS, maybe lower. So it's a godsend that frame gen exists and works as well as it does, because if you turn that off, it just pulverizes a 4090. Like it takes no prisoners at all. So, and I know that's very much, oh, woe is me, I'm getting drops below 60 FPS, but like there's really nothing out there apart from Cyberpunk that would even come close to doing that this generation. Yeah. So it shows you how demanding that is and how advanced technologically that game is. It's an amazing looking game. It really is amazing. Just the detail everywhere is incredible. The lighting is amazing. The reflections are incredible, particularly Alan's sections in the dark place, which are in this kind of weird psychedelic version of New York, where it's raining all the time. There's puddles everywhere. It just art direction as well is just such a highlight. It's amazing. It's just
nice.
I can't praise it enough. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, it's funny we talk about how good the game looks, because there was obviously a little bit of let's say controversy prior to launch about the game being 30 FPS on console, but based on how it looks and obviously what they're getting out of it on PC, to me it seems like it was a miracle they were able to get a 60 FPS mode on console.
It really is
at all, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very impressive that, as you say, that they have got a 60 FPS mode. I know, in resolution terms, it's not particularly high, right? Yeah. It doesn't, like, the base resolution is quite low. I think, is it below 1080p on the Series X and PS5? I think
so. Is it in like the 980 range or something like that? That maybe I can't remember exactly what it was, but I guess that's a sacrifice you got to make though for this. Exactly. I think a lot of people maybe forget that the console's 3 years old now. Like it's like they're old, Now I know we're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
like only halfway through this gen, or maybe not even halfway, but like, especially when you compare it to kind of the tech that's out on PC these days, um, it is really it's ancient, actually, I
yeah,
guess, to be fair. So the fact that we're getting games looking as good as this, and Spider-Man's another look. I think we haven't really touched on it, but I think Forza is a really good looking game on Xbox as well. I think it's a miracle we're able to get games looking this good, especially with some of them that have ray tracing, because I think ray tracing is one
yeah,
of those things that personally I don't think. I think obviously for yourself and your rig, I think it makes sense. But I think for basically everyone else, I personally don't think the performance hit is it warrants
yeah.
using ray tracing. I think in a lot of cases, but I think when you particularly see path tracing, and I think it was a Minecraft demo where Nvidia first
Yeah,
showed
I remember
off
that.
path tracing,
Yeah, it made it
and
look amazing, doesn't it?
yeah, it looked outrageous. I think that's when you really um, see what ray tracing can do for games. But I think the consoles that we have at the moment, they're just not powerful, and they're on AMD hardware, which obviously isn't very good
Yeah,
for ray tracing as well. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. I think really, like, I mean, Insomniac are probably the only ones that are actually doing pretty incredible things with ray tracing in a console.
yeah,
I think that's pretty much it. The fact that they only use ray trace reflections, pretty much. So, but the fact that they get those running and looking at as good as they do, I really think that adds to the experience in those games. Like that's genuinely something where you're like, okay, and also I think the difference is, which is again, Insomniac being a great developer, is they don't sacrifice the other stuff, because you've still got a 60 FPS game running at, what looks like a sharp resolution, and you've got ray tracing. But like, uh, you know, other devs, I don't know. Yeah, on console, it's not particularly worth it sometimes, especially if they're doing like ray traced ambient occlusion and I don't mean it's big on this, but like Forza's ray tracing is just not very good. Like even on PC, I don't think
yeah,
it's worth actually enabling it because it's there, but I don't really think it adds much to the experience, and it comes with a performance hit that's not really commensurate with the ray tracing experience it's delivering. So yeah, very
yeah,
few games are doing it well, and that's I think AMD need to hopefully improve that on the future GPU architectures, because Nvidia are just so far ahead. It's just
yeah.
unbelievable.
And it's difficult to see that changing too much because it almost feels like Nvidia will always be one generation ahead of AMD. So even if
Yeah,
AMD do improve it, Nvidia are likely to continue to improve it as well, or have other techniques that help with it as well, whether it be DLS 3.5 or the frame
yeah.
generation that you've mentioned. Forza's one that's interesting that you mentioned. I've not played the quality mode on console. I've not played it
Mm,
on PC. Obviously, my laptop's not powerful enough really to play it on there anyway. So I've only played the performance and the performance RT mode.
yeah,
I'm not playing a racing game in anything less than 60 FPS, so the quality mode wasn't
yeah,
even an
totally
option.
right.
I've
Yeah,
not even tried that. Honestly, I couldn't tell you the difference between the
yeah,
two. I
yeah,
switched between them, and I was like, "How did I save the setting?" I genuinely couldn't tell the difference between the two. I'm not too sure what they were doing, so I've just left it in performance mode.
yeah,
I remember playing in RT, and there was some reflections in the windscreen. I thought, oh, maybe that's it. But then they were there, and it's just on a regular
yeah,
performance. So that was probably just regular reflections that have been used since the dawn of time. So yeah, it's interesting that Insomniac are able to get out, because Spider-Man has it in every one of their modes, the
every
30,
mode.
40, and 60 mods,
Yeah,
which is really impressive, I think.
yeah, yeah. It's actually really disappointing for that reason. I don't mean in terms of a game, but just in terms of that feature. Because you look at something like Spider-Man, and it's a whole ass open world with these ridiculous levels of detail, and pedestrians, traffic, and everything has ray trace reflections, all mirrored finishes, not even proper full mirrored, but anything that's even remotely opaque has some element of ray trace reflection on it, apart from obviously things like concrete. and it does it all at 60 FPS at a good resolution and stuff. And then I just look at Forza and I'm like, how could they not at least have the ray tracing feature set that they kind of promised in the when they did that Xbox reveal that looked really incredible, the ray tracing on track in terms of full ray traced reflections in the car, and then also it traced the environment in those reflections as well. And even if you enable it on PC, it suffers from the same issues that the console versions do, which it only ray traces when actually there's another car quite close. So other than that, you don't get any ray trace reflections most of the time. And it just baffles me that this is an on-track sim racer, and you've got a big open world game doing incredible amounts of ray trace reflections everywhere at the same frame rate. So I thought that was really disappointing. Maybe I'm hoping, at least for the PC, that they'll patch it in the future, Turn 10, and really iterate on the ray tracing and kind of ultimately deliver that at least on PC. But it's disappointing it's not there at the moment.
Yeah. We'll come back to, actually no, I was going to say we'll come back to it in a second, but I guess while we're talking about Forza, I know you weren't particularly impressed just with the overall look or the visual quality of the game, not just including the ray tracing as well, but is that something that they can just upgrade in the future? Obviously it's not Forza Motorsport 8, it's just Forza Motorsport now. I think maybe there's an element of like, this is going to be like somewhat of a platform. It's not like we're going to have another Forza Motorsport in 2 years like they've previously done the biannual releases. Is that something that you would expect, or maybe at least like them to see upgrade in the future?
So. Yeah, I mean you had this to a lesser extent. You had this with Horizon 5, which, by the way, still one of the best looking games this generation. Looks incredible.
I actually prefer how Horizon 5 looks over Motorsport.
Yeah, it looks so much better, doesn't it? In Horizon 5, even though they never had full ray trace reflections, they did have car reflections, ray trace car reflections in the like the car viewer mode. And they eventually on PC brought that in game, so you could enable car reflections in game as well. So I'm hoping that at least on Motorsport, look, they must have had like that iteration of ray tracing in terms of full ray tracing across cars and environment. They must have had that in a build, and for whatever reason not gone through with it, because maybe it's too big a performance console, they couldn't get it to work in time, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, as you say, because this is a platform now, rather than when certainly not going to get Forza Motorsport 9 for a very long time, if whatever that's going to be called. So I'm hoping they introduce that into this one. But yeah, I think it's a strange game to me, Motorsport, because I think in some settings it looks fantastic. It looks really great. Mainly when it rains or it's overcast, I think it looks excellent. And then anytime you get any direct lighting, I just think it looks poor, to be honest. I don't think their lighting model is great. And it's not helped. I don't think their car, their car builds and the detail on those are particularly great either. Like, they're okay. But it just doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't hit right. But then you'll play like the Japanese track at night with some rain and it looks generationally better, so like it's something about their lighting model that I think whenever you get any direct light or anything like that on these cars, it just makes them kind of look, I don't know, odd.
I think the word I would maybe use is dull. Or almost.
I think that's right.
Yeah, there's a lack of vibrancy, I think, to the colors. It almost, I was thinking at the time, it was almost like if they just dialed the saturation up by 1 or something, like that would probably help. Because I remember seeing a lot of comparisons between Forza and Gran Turismo 7, and you can argue the difference between. I'm not here to argue that, but the one thing I would say is that the colors just in GT7 just popped more on the screen. It appeared more saturated, and I think people prefer that. I don't know. Do you ever watch any of Marquez Brownlee's stuff out of interest?
Occasionally,
Yes.
occasionally.
So he does like blind photography tests. So he'll take the same photo with two different cameras and do a vote on Instagram without knowing who it
Yeah.
is, and people vote on the favorites. And generally, what he finds is people prefer the more saturated look of the photos compared to the
Yeah.
more natural looks. I think maybe there's an element of that here as well. Have you played it since they introduced the patch that was meant to fix the black levels? Because
I haven't.
okay,
I haven't.
I would
So,
recommend
yeah,
playing it because I did see a noticeable improvement
that's good.
in it since that patch came out. I didn't know that this patch came out, but I played it the following day without realizing that they patched it. And I was like, hold on, something looks different.
Looks
Like
a lot
what
better.
looks
Yeah.
different? And I think I tweeted about it at the time, and someone commented that yeah, that they patched it to improve the black levels, which I think has been a noticeable difference. So it'll be interesting to see if that, obviously that's on Xbox. It'll be interesting to see if that translates over to
I
PC
hope so.
as well. You know, so
Yeah. Also, yeah, the HDR in this game is shit. I mean, it's just so bad on PC. I don't know if well, in fact, I did play it on console. It wasn't that good there either. I played it on Series X. But I think in racing games, HDR can make a pretty significant difference, and it baffles me again that Horizon 5 had very good HDR.
yeah.
Really, really nice. And that this game, built fundamentally on the same engine, looks worse.
Yeah, I mean, it should be on an improved version of
well, it should be more
the Forza
technologically
tech.
improved. Yeah. So it doesn't feel that way. I think that's the problem. I think if you play Horizon 5, you would probably think that was like the future iteration of motorsport. You know, you would think that's almost half a generation ahead in terms of how that looks. And yeah, like I play Gran Turismo. You know, it's and it looks better. Like I'm not trying to fanboy or inflame that, but I think the lighting model in that game is just much better. It certainly has better HDR, albeit that's a bit unfair because I think it has one of the best HDR implementations of any game.
Yeah,
and it just looks really nice. There's no reason why Forza Motorsport can't look as good or better than that based on the tech, but for whatever reason, what we've got at the minute just isn't quite there.
It's interesting because GT7's obviously cross-gen as well, and yet they've still obviously managed to get it looking as good as it does. Stubbs has just commented in the chat there, and I think maybe there's an element of this. He says it sounds like it's an unfinished product, and we know with Motorsport it had at least 2 public delays. I think it was originally due out end of last year. It was then delayed to spring of this year. I think when they did the summer showcase last year, they announced it for spring 2023, and I think that was kind of like the first official delay. I'm pretty sure it was announced for 2022 originally, and then it was delayed sort of out of spring and into September of this year. So that's obviously gone through a couple of delays, and it might be a case of that, Stubbs, where maybe, you know, it already had 2 delays and there was an element of, right, we need to get it out. I know we're focusing a lot on the visual appearance of it, but I believe there was a few other things. I can't remember exactly, so I'm not going to guess, but I think there were a few other kind of features, you know, along the lines of like split screen. I can't remember if split screen was one of them, but you know, that sort of thing that I think they had announced prior to release that. And there's the fireworks again. Apologies for any background noise. That they kind of announced, they would be coming after. So maybe it is a case of, you know, they delayed it to an extent, but they got to the point where they kind of had to get it out, and that meant cut features, and they didn't quite get the fidelity where they wanted it to. But I guess if the only upside to that, obviously don't like games being rushed out, but the only upside to that is hopefully that means it will get to that point at some point, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. It did feel a bit unfinished. I remember when I did the tweet about it, I think one of the points I had was that even the menu system felt kind of placeholdery. You know what I mean? Like it felt very basic, a bit bare. Everything feels a bit bare bones in the game. Like the kind of structure is there, but it didn't feel as fleshed out as I think it probably should have been, and it did feel like a conscious choice to just get it out there and kind of get people playing it and invested in it, and then to kind of iterate on that. And I'm sure it will eventually be a terrific game. You know, they'll have a great suite of visual features and all that sort of stuff. But it didn't feel quite right. When I played it, but I do need to. I will go back and check with the gamma fix, because that was a big issue as well. Raised black levels, which is a massive bugbear of mine. I just can't play games if that happens. So it's a real weird bugbear, but I hate it.
Well, hopefully it's had at least some impact. I don't think it's going to get to the point where you kind of expect it to, because obviously all the other issues of ray tracing thing, obviously they've not really addressed any of that, but hopefully at least it goes somewhere to correcting some kind of the visual issues. I think going to your point about like the menus and things like that, I guess the way I would probably describe it is just a bit boring. I think what I would say, because I know we've kind of focused mostly on kind of the maybe the more negative aspects of the game, I will say it just plays really well, and
it feels great,
and sounds very good, with the exception, although I think they fixed this, is when I first started playing it, I don't know if you noticed this, but when you ever went on a curb, or if you had even the most minor of crashes, it sounded like the car had just exploded. The sound was ridiculous. But on that, I think it sounds great. It feels great. And actually, I was surprised that I actually quite liked the career progression. Because that came into for a lot of criticism from reviewers, I think. But when I played it, and they have actually addressed it to speed up the progression of the cars since, I actually quite enjoyed it going through the events. I didn't mind doing practice. I like doing the practice to learn the car and learn the track. You go through 5 events, and then you move on to the next one. You get a new car, and you kind of build it from there. I actually didn't, or I haven't minded it so far. Obviously, it might change the more I play. I've not played it in a couple of weeks, so I've been playing Mario and things like that, obviously. But I was surprised that wasn't a problem for me, although I can understand maybe why some people had a bit of an issue with it. But the biggest criticism I would personally have it is the AI. I don't think the AI is very good at all, and I've always associated Forza with the AI because it was the first game, well, not the first game, sorry, but obviously they kind of introduced this concept of drivatars and things like that, and there's always been a focus on that in Forza games. But I found it just to be a little crap, to be honest. Sometimes I'm playing like just single player, and it feels like I'm playing online with people just bashing into you out of nowhere. And it's got this issue where there's difficulty levels. So I've been straddling between 4 and 5 when playing it, but in 4 sometimes the races are too easy, but then 5 I've got no chance of catching. Like there seems to be quite a difficulty spike between those two levels, so I've kind of settled on 4 for now. But so it's interesting, but hopefully they get to the point. Stubbs, I probably wouldn't call it bare bones. It's certainly not bare bones. There's a ton of content in there. It's got loads of cars, loads of tracks. It's got online, it's got offline. I don't think bare bones would be the way to describe it. I think just maybe lacking in some aspects of its presentation. Maybe I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, to be honest. So, but hopefully they improve it. And like I say, look, it'll be good to hear if that's had some impact for you on PC if you get around to playing it again.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that. Hopefully that will make a bit of a difference at least.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Matt's actually calling back to a topic that he started back in the GPG days, where he says it was agreed gameplay over performance over graphics. I think I'd still agree with that if that was consensus. I don't think that'll ever change. Gameplay is the most important thing, and I'll always prefer 60 FPS or higher over how the game looks. I don't think you'd find too many people arguing with that, to be honest. So and Asher has cars. It definitely has cars.
Yeah, it does.
I think it's got a lot of them.
It's a bit of a rumor, but I think it does actually have a car or two.
It's got at least 3, because I bought 3
cars.
so it's got at least 3 cars, Ash. So if you're into racing games with at least 3 cars, then you're in for
This is the game for
a
you.
treat. So, I need to get back to it. Actually, I played a bit, but like I say, I dropped off because of the games like Mario and stuff come out.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those games that'll have kind of like a long tail. I think it's a game that I'll be playing for a while,
Definitely.
especially without another motorsport. And I guess that won't be coming in the near future. But I am actually curious as to what Horizon 6 looks like whenever that comes. I mean,
Probably bonkers.
yeah, I mean, when did 5 come out? Is that
20,
2 years ago?
20?
Oh, yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
I think 2020 rings a bell. If anyone in chat knows, let us know. But that's obviously another game that was kind of on a 2-year cadence originally. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we kind of already passed that. So I wonder if that's something that might be like next year, maybe? That would be kind of 4 years.
That's going to look so good, isn't it? That's just going to look incredible.
Yeah. Although I do hope, and this is more for your sake, more than mine, mate.
Yeah.
I do really hope it takes advantage of more NVIDIA features.
Yes.
Because I know, although actually I don't know if you saw, but Starfield just announced that they're getting DLS 3.5 or 3 at least. In a patch. I don't know if it's come yet, but it's coming if it hasn't come already. Which is funny because that's before FSR 3. And obviously it's an AMD partner game, but it's getting that before FSR 3.
Mad, isn't it?
So yeah, hopefully that helps with Starfield. Have you played much of that since I have interest, Luke?
No, I got about
that was like the new hotness when we last called.
It was the new hotness, yeah, back in the heady days of September. I got about 25 hours into it, and then I came off it. And I don't know. I mean, we talked about this, didn't we? The kind of my thoughts haven't changed, I guess, from when we talked about it, which was just that I just didn't jive with the way that you explore in that game, and I didn't jive at all with the loading screens. It just really cracked immersion for me quite a lot. So not a bad game by any stretch, actually quite a good game. But it didn't grab me.
Yeah.
I don't think. I may go back to it if when other things settle down, maybe next year in a lull, when there's not much coming out.
Yeah.
Maybe then.
That's fair.
But yeah, strange game. Like, it's a strange game. But I can see why some people just absolutely adore it. Like, I think that's fair.
Yeah, definitely. I think I kind of fell off after about 10 hours, and I've not been back to be honest. I do actually think the 30 FPS on console really hurts the game. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but yeah, I think it just impacts how it feels, especially when I think the shooting is actually one of the good elements of the game. I was really surprised at how that felt.
It feels good.
I think first-person shooters in 30 FPS, I think, it's kind of like racing. I don't want to play racing games, in anything under 60. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I've not been back to it. So yeah, I know this is going to be a little bit jarring, Luke, but I guess just to kind of round things out, because we didn't quite finish Alan Wake 2 talk, I do have one final question to kind of go all the way back to that, nice. to finish this off, and then I think we can wrap up for the night and let people get on and enjoy their evenings. Saga, obviously a new character. Obviously Alan Wake, the original, focused entirely on Alan Wake, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Obviously, they introduced Saga as a new character to the game. What's that like, and is that I guess, does it offer like a really good contrast to the Alan Wake sections of the game? I know you probably wouldn't spoil too much, but how have you found that element of the game?
Yeah, really good. I think she's like a cool character. I think she's kind of as I said, like a vehicle to get you to. For new players, she's a great vehicle for you to kind of get into the universe, because she herself is completely new to it. And then, in terms of the difference between the set, how she plays and Alan plays, like they play fundamentally the same in terms of mechanics and stuff. Like they have slight differences, and Alan gets a unique weapon which Saga doesn't get, and that sort of stuff. But then in terms of the sections that you play through with these characters, they're very, very different, because Saga is effectively in the the normal world, right? She's in Bright Falls and the places of the first game. And even though these places are weird, they're still grounded in reality for the most part. So she's kind of going through a lot of forests and those kind of areas, small rural towns. And then she has this unique mechanic, which is she can go into what she calls a mind place, which is like it's almost like a just basically a kind of created thinking area, which is physical in her mind. You can actually you can be playing and be in the forest somewhere with Saga, and you can press like the select button, for example, and you'll instantly switch to this separate room where she's dressed completely differently, and there's no enemies and that sort of stuff. It's really impressive, actually. And she's an FBI agent, so one of her mechanics is like profiling. She can profile people in that place and discover answers for herself, and she can kind of piece together cases on a case board. So you actually go and physically put your pictures, and you draw the lines and you do all that stuff. So it's really cool. And then Alan, so the way Alan plays is he's in the dark place, which is not a place of reality. Effectively, going back to the first game, and his world is totally different, and he doesn't have a mind place, but he has the writer's room, and he can go there and kind of put together, without going into spoilers, like it's all about he's writing a story, right? And he can manifest a story through his writing, and there's these incredibly cool elements of his side of things where you're going through this kind of dreamlike New York, and he's writing the story as you're playing it, and you get to choose elements of the story as you play. So you'll go, for example, into like, say, a hotel lobby, and you might be, he's writing a story about, let's say, a cult, and he can it's a normal hotel lobby, and then you can select like that there's been a ritual murder in this lobby, actually. And the whole scene will transform before your eyes into like a completely different area. Like it's still a hotel lobby, but it just looks completely different. So there's a lot of like unique things to how they both play, even if kind of movement and weaponry is very similar. So I think it's super clever how they've done it, and there's a good balance. And also I think it's cool because I don't know if you saw this before the game came out, but the way that the game starts is you play their kind of sequences in order up until a certain point. So you play Saga, and then you play as Alan, and then you go back to Saga. And then there's a point of convergence in the storyline where they go, okay, now you can play as whoever you want in whatever order. So you can actually just, if you wanted to play the next 10 hours of the game or 5-6 hours of the game as Alan, you can go and do that, and you don't have to switch. And then you can go and play the rest of it as Saga. And then obviously I've not got to the end, but there is a point where they converge again effectively, and then the game ends. Or you can do it you could do like one section with Saga and then one section with Alan. So or however you want to do it. So it's really cool. Like that stuff's really, really cool. It's quite different from, again, lending itself to the idea of the storyline is not told in a linear way. It's very clever. It's nice. It's a very clever game.
Nice. So definitely one to check out. I think I'll definitely pick it up, especially knowing that you don't necessarily have to have played the first game. I'll have to maybe check out a YouTube kind of story summary or anything like that. Although I did see apparently Fortnite had actually a pretty good introduction as well.
Yeah, I've heard it's actually really good. So actually, if you want to, rather than play the game, maybe just download Fortnite and play that bit, because it might actually be very helpful.
Yeah, I think it was Huber from Easy Allies. Like, I don't think he was doing it kind of sarcastically or anything, but when they were talking about it, he he called out the fact that, you know, play that bit in Fortnite before the game when they were having similar discussions. So interesting.
I'd also say that if you love Sam Lake, and everybody should love Sam Lake because he's a proper gaming genius and just a really nice person by the sound of things, but he's in this, his model is in this game in a pretty significant way. So he plays a character who's an FBI agent called Alex Casey, and it's just so surreal seeing, like, I think James McCaffrey voices him, or I think is the voice of I could be wrong, I'm sure it's the guy who voices Max Payne in Max Payne 3. It might be the original Max Payne's actually. So it's Sam Lake's body, but voiced by this guy who sounds nothing like him.
That's probably a little jarring, you know, because you would be expecting one voice to come out, because Sam Lake's got a very distinct voice.
Exactly,
as well.
But it works. So, like, again, it's just this weird. It works. Like, it's just this weird thing where you kind of, the whole game is like this kind of dream-like, esoteric, incoherent kind of, you know, event that's happening. And when you see stuff like that, it like, it's almost like on a meta level that it's more incoherent. Like, you know that that's Sam Lake, and you know that's not his voice, but it works. It's a bit like in Death Stranding, right? Like Guillermo del Toro's model is in the game, but he's voiced by someone completely different, and you kind of think, oh, would that work? But it does work. They kind of get away with it. So, oh man, it's a good game, man. It's really good. But what I want to say is, actually, before we go, if you've got time,
of course,
why don't you talk about Jusant, which is on the screen, which is obviously just going to come out.
I probably should talk about the game that's in the video before we wrap up. So I've got the footage here, I think, from somewhere midway between the game. I think I'm in maybe the end of chapter 2, beginning of chapter 3 here, possibly, which I think is about halfway. I've not completed it, but I'm assuming I'm somewhere more than halfway now. I've played a little bit beyond this as well, but I've really, really enjoyed it. I know you really enjoyed playing the demo. You and Indy did a video together discussing it, I believe, and you were pretty high in it as well, and I've really, really enjoyed what I've played. It's the climbing mechanic in it is, especially when you get like into it, I don't really know how to describe it. It's almost rhythmic in a way when you climb it, and when you, like, sometimes you fumble it and you don't necessarily fall. I've not fell too much in this, but you use the triggers to basically, left triggers left hand, right triggers right hand, and you're using that to control and use the sticks to kind of direct your hands. When you get that going and you get like a really good climb, it's unbelievably satisfying. Great, it feels really, really good. The only issue I've got with it so far is sometimes the physics, I think, can be a little bit weird, I think, just by nature of it, because there's some footage you'll see, I think, in this where, like, the rope's just ridiculously long and I've wrapped around some stuff, and the game probably wasn't expecting me to be wrapped around that kind of thing. But on that, I've really, really enjoyed it. The ballast that you've got with you, the little frog-like creature, I guess, is unbelievably cute. He helps you as you go along as well. Like I say, the climb mechanics are really good, and I've actually been surprised at how they develop the climbing mechanics. It's not just the same each time, if that makes sense. Kind of it iterates on that as you progress to make it feel a little bit different, whether it be using other things or maybe the environment differently as well. So I've been really, really surprised at just how good it's felt to play. I think it looks amazing. I think the art style is fantastic. Don't know, it's done an awesome job there. I think the audio, particularly the soundtrack, is really, really good as well. So I've really enjoyed it. I'm probably about 3 hours in. I don't think it's particularly long. I think it's probably like 5 or something from what I'm told.
5 or 6.
But I think that's a perfect length again, especially for this type of game. And I'm actually very curious about the kind of the narrative that's going on. You're the only character along with your ballast, or at least so far. All the stories kind of told through notes and things that you pick up as you ascend. So I'm really curious because one of my friends has completed it. He said there's something at the end that helps you understand what's gone on. So I'm really curious as to how the narrative progresses as well. So, but you were really hot on the demo that you played as well, weren't you?
Yeah. Myself and Indy did I think it was 2 hours of the game.
Was it just the first two? I assume it was just from the beginning.
Yes, from the beginning. Yeah, first 2 hours. And before that, they had a Next Fest demo which I'd played as well, which again was, I think it was like half an hour, half an hour. We were both really high on it. I think it's I'm really looking forward to playing it actually once I've got through some other stuff, because from the preview you'd have heard that we both really enjoyed it. Even then it felt very polished, it felt kind of ready to go. And it's it's just a different game. I think that's what I really like about it. Is, I've said this in the preview, I like that it's a bit Death Stranding-y in that it's, and I don't mean that in terms of story or anything, but it's taking something that we almost take for granted in games, which is movement and exploration, and making that the focus of it rather than just an ancillary thing. And the climbing mechanics are just, they're fantastic. And it's a great looking game. It's lighting in particular. It's a UE5 game, isn't it? So
okay.
Yeah, so it's UE5. I don't know if it uses Nanite, but it does use Lumen. So it uses the proper, lighting, global illumination feature of UE5. And I just like everything's got you kind of like untextured look to the world in terms of art style. It just looks really good. You wouldn't think it would, but they pull it off very well, I think.
Yeah, it is. It being UE5 might explain some of the frame rate issues.
Yes.
Nothing too jarring. Happened at like really unusual times, just like when I'm in a corridor and I'm just panning the camera. It's never really affected when I'm climbing or using or swinging or anything like that. Funny, it's happened in like unusual places where I'd expect frame rate issues to happen, but that might explain a little bit there. Nothing that's detracted from the game, to be honest. But yeah, I think obviously you've played a little bit. You've been hot on it. I'm not too sure where you kind of got up to in the demo, but obviously if it was just the early stages, there's some really cool stuff that they do as you progress with the movement as well, just to, like I say, it kind of just expands upon just the climbing mechanic that's there. One thing I think I would like to call out as well actually is how almost, I don't know if rewarding is the right term, but in terms of just the exploration within it, obviously it's relatively linear, but there are aspects where you can go off and explore the secrets throughout. But I've found that to be almost, I guess what I'm kind of looking for is it's natural as to how you go through that. Like, it doesn't seem like you've got, like, nothing's kind of just like hidden in a corner where you've got to go and look up a guide to go and find it. Kind of, it's all kind of naturally accessible and easily accessible to the point where if you want to go and find it, you can find it. You don't have to find it. But yes, some of the secrets are pretty cool as well. And like I said, the ballast. I don't know if the ballast has got a name. It is just called a ballast. I think is, like I say, unbelievably cute. There's an achievement for hugging it 30 times. So if you if you want that,
that quite easily, I think,
hit left on the D-pad a few times to get that. And it's just it's also something different for Don't Nod as well, actually. But then Don't Nod also had, was it Banishers? That was Don't Nod, or was it Banishers or something?
Banishers goes to Sweden. I think that was pushed to February, but that also looks really good. Like very different game, but I think that actually looks really cool.
Yeah,
so some great like AA games that they make. Like these kind of visually quite nice games, but a bit limited in terms of scope. But actually, it works in their favor really well. I think they're doing some great stuff. Including this, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're turning into quite the developer. Obviously, I played a couple of their more narrative driven games this generation, like which one? Oh, Tell Me Why, I think is one of them
Yeah,
that was talking out as well. I really enjoy that. Obviously, this is vastly different to that game.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to check it out. Obviously, it's in a sea of other games, but like I say, a relatively short experience. I think if you just want something a little bit different, especially I guess the intensity of a survival horror game. I know you were saying you kind of bouncing from that to Mario, which is quite a contrast. I think if you get done with Mario, this would be a nice game to go to. It's really
Definitely,
therapeutic and relaxing to play it. So yeah,
definitely.
definitely recommend it. It's in Game Pass as well, in case anyone didn't know. But would highly recommend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually playing it properly. I will be finishing it. Because yeah, everything I've heard, everything I've already played, it's my kind of game.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, I think with that, mate, we'll wrap up the show. We're going a little
Yeah.
over an hour and a half, so that might be our longest one yet. I can't remember. Obviously, we're only 3 in, so yeah, we'll hopefully do another one. Obviously, it's been cool. Just get a chance to chat about the games, not worry too much about the drama, and talk about what we've been playing. So hopefully, people have enjoyed the show. I can't put links in the description yet. I don't have the authority to do it on YouTube yet, because I'm not. I don't know. I think you've got to be doing it for a certain amount of time before you can put links. So unfortunately, no links in the description to things. But I would call out, first of all, to check out the video that you and Indy did on Jusant. If you've liked the look of the video on the screen and you want to check out more, please check that out. Obviously, check the game out as well. It's out now. Check out the Indie Gamer channel as well. Just hit over 5k views. I'm sure everyone who's listening to the show probably already knows, but on the off chance there isn't, check out the Indie Gamer channel. Just hit over 5k. Excellent achievement. He's flying at the moment, Indy. If you're still listening, mate, congratulations once again, mate. Yeah, as I say, it's very much well deserved. But to round us out, mate, want to tell people where they can find you if they want to hear a little bit more from yourself?
Yeah, I think I mean you've basically listed it out, but apart from those things, just go and follow me on Twitter X at LukeSteele90, and I'll probably just be incessantly tweeting about Alan Wake 2 for the next week or so as I finish the game, and then that will subside. So then that'll be all right. But yeah, it's been a pleasure as always chatting with you. And we'll do it again very soon, I think.
Yeah, it'll definitely be good to at least get one more in. I mean, I'm going to say this year. I know that sounds mad, but you know, we are in November. It'll be good to get at least one more in this year. And yeah, there's going to be a few more things to talk about, I assume.
I think if we got Flap and Pucks, and we could do like maybe a year retrospective, kind of talking about the Game Awards and when that after that.
Definitely have to do that. Have our own like Gordy show as well.
Maybe we could do that. I think that would be really cool if we can manage to get that going.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the guys and we'll get something in. Obviously, hopefully people will look forward to that. But on that note, we will let people get on with their evenings. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday evening or whatever day you happen to listen to this on. But thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Bye bye.